Welcome back, everyone, to the Lost Estate Podcast. I am your host, Jermaine Whiteside, and I'm thrilled to be joined today by two fantastic guests, financial professional Don Johnson and leadership expert Thomas Clark. Today, we dive into week 3 of our series, talking about the theological ethics in financial decisions. Welcome, Don and Thomas.
Thanks, Jermaine. It's great to be here again. This is such an important topic that we're discussing. I'm glad to be here again, once again.
Absolutely, Jermaine. I'm excited to see how faith is going to guides our financial choices that we make every day.
So let's jump right in. We've been talking about the concept of theological ethics, which refers to the principles of our faith that guide our moral decisions, especially when it comes to money. As we know, finances are often a tricky area for many of us. It's easy to compartmentalize our financial decisions from our faith, but today we want to show how they're deeply connected.
That's right, Jermaine. One thing I've noticed in my work as a financial professional is that many people see money purely for practical uses, like budgeting, saving, or investing. But the truth is, how we manage our money says a lot about what we value. It's not just about good financial habits, but it's about reflecting God's principle in everything we do.
Exactly. One scripture that comes to mind is 1 Timothy 6 chapter 17th through the 19th. Paul tells us to not put our hope into wealth, but into God, who richly provides us with everything. He also reminds us to be generous and willing to share. This ties into the idea of stewardship, right? Our finances are a tool, and we are stewards of what God has given us. Thomas, how do you see stewardship playing out in leadership and decision-making?
Great question, Jermaine. I often tell leaders that stewardship is the heart of ethical leadership. It's about realizing that what we have is the resources, whether they're resources or influences or finances, it's really not ours. We're just caretakers in leadership. We're making decisions that honor the greater good. And when it comes to finances, we have to ask questions like, how can I use this wealth to serve others and reflect my faith?
Now that ties into the parable of the rich fool in Luke 12. Now here's a man who had an abundance of wealth, and instead of using it to bless others or even bless God, he decided to build bigger barns to store it all for himself. And God says, God basically calls him a fool. This very night, your life will be demanded of you. Now, the lesson here is that, hoarding wealth for ourselves without considering what we can do to serve God and others is a dangerous mindset.
That's such a powerful story, Don. It reminds me of how often we get caught up in the pursuit of more and more money, more and more possessions, when really the Bible calls us to be content and to use our resources to serve others. I think of Zacchaeus from Luke 19 is another example. After he encounters Jesus, Zacchaeus immediately changes his relationship with money. He gives half his wealth to the poor and repays anyone he has cheated 4 times over. Thomas, what do you think causes such a dramatic transformation in Zacchaeus?
Well, Zacchaeus' transformation was about encountering Jesus. When he truly experienced the love and grace of God, it changed everything, including how you see wealth. Zacchaeus realized that his identity wasn't his wealth or his status, but it was in how he could use those resources to make it right and serve others. That's why I always tell leaders, when your value change, your actions change. Zacchaeus' financial decisions became a reflection of his new faith.
I love that. When your values change, your actions change. So let's talk about some practical steps. Don, as a financial professional, how do you guide people to make financial decisions that align with their faith?
Now, great question. I always kind of start by looking at their priorities and ask yourself, what do I value most? In your faith, it is, the center of your life, then it should be the center of your financial decisions. And then next, what we look at is a budget. And I ask, am I honoring God with my wealth? Am I being generous, and am I just accumulating? So I also encourage people to, be mindful, where they invest their monies. It's important to invest in things that align with your values, whether that's avoiding industries that go against Christian ethics or supporting companies that are doing, good work in the world.
That's great advice, Don. And to add to that, I think it's important to think long term. How do these decisions that I make today reflect my legacies? What you want to leave behind? Are you building bigger bonds for yourself? Excuse me, or are you investing in things that will have eternal value? Stewardship is about thinking beyond just today and asking how your financial choices will impact others.
Absolutely. It's about leaving a legacy that reflects the love of Christ. As we wrap up today's discussion, I want to leave our listeners with a few questions to reflect on. Are your financial decisions reflecting your trust in God? Are they driven by fear and accumulation? How can you practice generosity in your financial life? Are there areas where you need to align your finances with your faith? Take time this week to reflect on these questions and ask God for guidance in aligning your financial decision with His will.
Those are great questions, Jermaine. It's always a good idea to take a step back and reassess how you're using the resources that God has blessed you with.
I agree. Financial decisions and spiritual decisions, and when we get that perspective, it changes everything.
Well, thank you both, Don and Thomas, for your insight today. It's been a rich conversation about how we can honor God with our finances. To our listeners, remember to check out the full week presentation on our website at thelostestate.org and join our discussion on our Facebook community page. We'll see you next time for week 4, and we'll continue to explore how faith guides our financial lives. God bless.
Recording stopped.